Hello, good evening to all of you who are tuning into tonight's episode of Real Living in Elmhurst. And before I begin tonight's episode, for those of you who may be watching this for the first time, this may be your first episode that you're tuning in, or you're watching it as a recording on demand after tonight's live stream. Let me share with you why you're here and why Real Living in Elmhurst is being developed, curated, and put in front of all of you. This is a personal project of mine. It is where I reach out to some of my friends, enough of my neighbors, and one last bit, an individual who either runs a business from Elmhurst or has a business that they operate and run in Elmhurst. So that is kind of the backdrop as to why I've headlined and titled this video podcast series called Real Living in Elmhurst. Tonight's guest is a friend of mine who I've come to know over the past several years, and he is someone that I want to share with you. And so let me bring him into the studio, and then we'll move into our conversation for tonight. Hello, Mr. McCormack.
Hello, Bill. How are you?
I'm doing well. You're looking good. You're looking good. So, as you may have heard me share with our audience members as to why they're virtually here with us, either watching, listening, or joining us through this live stream, or they're watching this after the fact, on demand, like everything in life these days, Uber, cable, blah, blah, blah.
24/7.
24/7, always available.
Yep.
I shared with everyone as to why I have very unique individuals that I asked to share their time in this video podcast series. So, John, without further ado, let me move into the conversation and ask you, how did you get into owning and being a landlord of medical office buildings?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story, but it goes back all the way to the early 90s after working with another firm. And then after a couple of years leaving that firm and starting one with my partner, who is now pretty much retired.
Okay.
We just started knocking on doors and taking on assignments. We took a few properties with us. One thing led to another, primarily office and retail.
Really?
Because back then, and even for the next, from 90 to the early 2000s, medical really wasn't a bona fide space.
Really?
No one really recognized it as a separate asset class. There were very few. There's a firm here in Chicago that I give credit to really being the pioneer, Lilliebridge. They were one of the first firms to work specifically on medical.
Okay.
But we took on an assignment in Elmhurst at 386 York Road, and one thing led to another, and we started getting some traction on the medical, and we were able to make that work. It became a very successful property for us.
Wow.
And we just kind of grew it from there.
Oh, wow. So you kind of pioneered this asset class locally here in Elmhurst. Love it.
Well, in Elmhurst, yeah, I wouldn't say we pioneered, but we were one of the space continues to be somewhat fragmented. So it's very difficult. Brokers will tell you that you should specialize in industrial, specialize in retail. And I don't disagree with that. But when you specialize in one of those market segments, and that market segment comes under tremendous pressure,
right?
Then you're starving.
Gotcha.
You're almost out of business. And there's numerous examples of that.
Meaning you are holding a one-trick pony.
Exactly.
Got it.
So there's ways to offset that with management companies, but the commercial real estate outside of the behemoths that are out there, for the rest of us, you really have to have a strategy, a game plan, how to pay the bills, how to pay yourself. And so we just we stayed small, for the most part, because when you create a beast, you have to feed it,
Yeah.
and that becomes quite difficult.
Gotcha.
And there are better firms, or I won't say better firms. There are bigger firms that have a better presence in any given market, where it's tough to compete with them. They've got relationships in the boardroom, in the C-suites, and you're just not going to have a crack at that business unless it's something that they really need from you.
Sure.
And we're a small firm. It was just two of us.
Gotcha. But it sounds like you clearly knew who your target persona is, and you attracted that for yourself.
Yeah, well, you leverage off of your strengths, and we were able to leverage from one or two of our tenants, either taking them and doing a build to suit, moving them out, or leveraging a relationship with somebody at the hospital. Nowadays, hospital medical MOBs is all the rage, but going back 20, 30 years, that wasn't the case.
So speak to that for a little bit. Why is MOBs, medical office buildings, right now all the rage? What's changing in the business of medicine that is creating this rage?
Well, there's several reasons, but the first ones that come to mind would be that MOBs on campus are important because some people want to be close. Surgeons need to be close by.
Right.
Okay. Sometimes to diversify their practice, they will take on multiple locations. So they'll see patients in Elmhurst, they'll go out to Glen Ellen, or they'll go downtown. Could be a husband and wife team where they rotate through. It could be a partnership where they rotate through. There's numerous examples of different reasons why you want to be on a on-campus MOB. Then the flip side is, now the rage, they call it med-tailing. It's the retailing of medical space. Dentists were really the first ones to start that. And now just about across the board, with the exception of industrial space, medical can be in anything. It could be in an office building. It could be in a retail center. It could be standalone. We have examples of that all over. You just have to be careful because medical has certain requirements. Yeah. Parking, plumbing, electrical, the layout, you have to be very attentive to their designs.
Gotcha. How is owning a medical office building different than owning, let's say, a multi-family apartment building, in your opinion?
Well, I don't have a great deal of experience with multifamily, but there's a lot of keys involved. That's like a hotel. Every key to the front door enters into a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom apartment, which could be multiple people, which present multiple issues. Medical, once you get it established, is great because although they can be demanding, if you run a good building and everything is in good working order, it can run pretty smoothly. If I were to do it again, I would prefer to build new because you could build to the specifics of any given medical tenant. We converted property in Melrose Park. We did one in Elmhurst. Trying to think, there were a few others along the ways that you inherit some design flaws, and it can be expensive to alter. It can be expensive to manage because it just doesn't work. True. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, I've heard the cliche, and it sounds like you were speaking to it. It's more cost effective to build new as opposed to retrofitting or renovating existing.
Correct. Yeah. Well, especially when you're talking about properties that were developed a minimum of 20, but more like 30, 40, 50 years ago. Years ago, it wasn't uncommon when we got started, to have a few buildings in Elmhurst that I represented. They were narrow door jambs before ADA requirements. They were embedded door jambs in plaster. Well, those are those are a blankety blank to move. You know, it's
Yeah.
just much better. It's just much better. You know, doctors tend to work in a 3-pod room scenario where you've got
Okay.
one waiting, one being seen, and one, you know, exiting. You know,
True.
if they didn't lay it out like that years ago, you know, and now everything is efficiencies. All these big
Sure.
groups that buy the little groups,
Yeah.
they've got them on the clock where, you know, you know that the stopwatch starts as soon as you walk in.
True. True. Physicians are in today's world, they are asked to see more patients
Correct.
based on the 60-minute window.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And technology plays a big role in that. But
True.
Wall
True.
Street's gotten involved, private equity's gotten involved, and they say, you know, forget about sitting there and talking to Bill or John for 20 minutes. You know, the nurse practitioner is going to do all the, you know, internal
Yeah.
diagnostics, get it ready. You knock on the door, you come in for 5 minutes, boom, you're on to the next one, and they send you a big bill.
True. That you come in and look at what's on the iPad,
Yep.
or on a piece of paper,
Yep.
and you provide your diagnosis, your advice. You sign off on something, and on to the next room they go.
You know, years ago, some of these buildings, they would cross-reference or cross-refer. But now that there's, you know, large hospital organizations, they want to keep all those docs under the umbrella, and they would prefer to have them in their own properties. Or you see them go out into the communities, and, you know, they can't do 10 or 15,000 feet anymore. They want 30, 40, 50,
Oh,
60,
wow.
you know, some even more, because they
Yeah.
might do a surgery center. They
Right.
might have a dialysis lab in there, you know, so on and so forth. So it's, you know, you really have to stay on top of the trends, because with a pen stroke, you know, something happens legislatively, you could be out of business, the tenant could move on, and it's tough to re-tenant that space.
Gotcha. However, am I correct? As an owner landlord of a medical office building, unlike a multifamily apartment building, your tenants typically are signing on longer term lease, right?
Usually, because of the financial commitment involved,
Okay.
whether it's with TI dollars or if they're spending their own money as well,
Okay.
you know, they want to set up shop and be there for the long term.
Sure.
You know, most of them secure the right of first refusal or some expansion capabilities if the space becomes available. You do your best. Inevitably, sometimes you can't accommodate them and they leave. You know,
Okay.
we've taken several tenants out of some of our buildings and put them into others, or relocated them completely into a new building.
Okay.
You know, that works well. It doesn't work well when it's a competitor that comes and purchases your tenant, but that happens
Right.
as well.
Right. Right. What tip or advice, maybe not all of the tips or advice, but what tip or advice would you consider sharing to a new investor, a new owner of a medical office building? John?
Know your competition. Know where you fit in within that competition. You know, how are you going to compete with the brand new shiny nickel, you know, the brand new space?
Right.
You know, there's a couple examples in some of the, you know, close in suburbs where, you know, the space has been sitting there for years and years and years. And they think that somebody's going to take over space that still has wood paneling, shag carpet, dirty linoleum. You know, people vote with their own money or their insurance money, whether
Okay.
it's the HSA account or their own, you know, private insurance. You know, they want to go someplace nice. Obviously, they're
Yeah.
looking for a competent doctor, but, you
Sure.
know, take a look at some of the properties that have been developed out on, you know, out on Ogden, down by the hospital, Oak Brook. I think Northwestern's doing something. You know, these new facilities are absolutely gorgeous. The one
Yeah.
at the Rush down there in Oak Brook,
I
on
know.
York Road. I
Yeah.
mean, what don't they have?
Yeah. It almost gives you the vibe of it's a high-end retail atmosphere,
Oh, sure,
a
sure.
fitness atmosphere, all of
Well,
the above.
look at your high-end dentists, your high-end dentists or dermatologists.
Yeah.
You know, they really make their space very comfortable, very customer friendly.
Right.
It's beautiful space. It's almost like walking into somebody's house.
Yeah. Very true. Very true.
Mhm.
Let's let's now move the conversation to some other lighter topics.
Okay.
Because you and I frequently share and spend time with each other in Elmhurst.
Mm-hmm.
Why Elmhurst? Why did you decide to own and manage this medical office building in Elmhurst as opposed to, I don't know, LaGrange, Western Springs? Can you speak to that?
Sure. I think Elmhurst is a great community, great town.
Yeah.
And it's deceptive because Elmhurst is a big space.
Yeah, you're right.
I've always, forget about over the last couple of years, people finally realize, not only the train, but they've got a huge downtown,
right?
With lots of shops and restaurants and entertainment.
Right.
When I started, I could be wrong, but my earliest recollection was when Tom Marcucci was the mayor.
Yes.
And he said, there was a push for some condo projects back then in the mid 90s, early 90s or so. And he said, we build the residential, the commercial will follow suit. And I think that's very true. And you can see that that's happened in Arlington Heights. It's happened in a lot of towns. Some towns fight it. I do live in LaGrange, and LaGrange is fairly open-minded, but there are other smaller towns around there that say, well, we don't want to be Elmhurst, or we don't want to be Arlington Heights.
Right.
Okay, well, that's a choice you make, but if you miss the mark, you lose out on a lot of business.
True.
So Elmhurst has a tremendous amount to offer. I don't know what percentage of the housing stock has been replaced.
Okay.
But it's got to be a pretty good percentage because so many properties have gone away, older properties, and come back as multi-million-dollar homes, developments. So you've got the downtown section, then the northwest is the industrial stuff. The York Road corridor. You've got Spring Road. Then you've got everything down by the hospital along Butterfield. And Butterfield really it's almost Oak Brook.
Yeah.
The second MOB that the hospital wanted is over there on Butterfield Road.
Yeah. That makes sense.
They didn't go into the first one, or they missed out, and they're at, the Butterfield Exchange.
Right.
That was a pure play office, and now it's mostly medical.
Yeah.
But that's a good example because I think they're stressed. When it comes to parking.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful where you go. Yeah.
Not to mention, I'm sure you see this when you come into Elmhurst to check on your building and tenants. There are now popping up quite a bit. These mid to higher rise luxury apartments.
Sure.
So for your tenants, the physicians, the medical group, that simply means more patients that are going to hurt themselves that need to see them.
Well, absolutely.
What is your favorite Elmhurst spot, John?
Oh, boy.
If I had to ask you, what is the one favorite Elmhurst spot? Which one is that for you?
Oh, it's tough to pick one. I'm down a couple pounds, so I'm happy to tell you I'm trying to skip some of them. But you and I have had lunch at 100 South.
Yeah.
At Pizza di Pazzo, over across the street. That's a great place. There's, Francesca's is good. Roberto's. There's no shortage of good ones. That Nashville hot chicken over there on North Avenue. That's pretty
I haven't been to that one. Okay.
That's pretty good.
That's good too. All right.
That's a new one for me.
Well, as we always try to do, when we get together, we will try to hit some of those other spots that you frequent that maybe I haven't been there yet. How's that?
There you go. Well, I haven't counted them, but I'm sure there's, so many different choices. You could probably spend a night at a different restaurant for at least a month, if not longer.
So very true.
And I think there's more coming in.
Yeah, and with more tenants, residents, renters, like you said earlier at the top of the conversation, Elmhurst has to feed the beast.
Well, the other thing that take into consideration, Bill, what sets Elmhurst apart, the train is a very important factor,
right?
Okay, but it now has it's always had, but it was a college, now it's a university,
right?
you know, you got people that come in and visit, or you know, want to take their kids out. You know, that's a big play. That's a big asset
Yeah.
for a community. You know, not every town has a college
Yeah.
or
Very
a
true.
university for that matter. And
Yeah.
like you said, you know, whatever goes away, that Ryan project is what, 275 units, and the
Yeah.
one that Opus did with the Mark. You
Yeah.
know, those are beautiful apartments. Obviously, upscale clientele that
True.
has you know, access to a health club, if not right up the street on Addison, is that one. You know,
Right.
it's a $20 million health club.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I
And
mean, there's not much. I can't think of many things that are lacking, you know, from Elmhurst.
yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. As we wrap up tonight's conversation, everyone, John, thank you for sharing your time with me
Oh, sure, you're welcome,
and
Bill.
many others who are watching, listening to our conversation that want to learn more about MOBs, medical office buildings. For those of you who are potentially moving into Elmhurst, moving around Elmhurst, or maybe this will happen, you're moving out of Elmhurst for sunnier weather, because that can happen. For when that happens, if you need financial solutions for your next real estate goal, simply scan the QR code. Solutions are readily available. And so, John, as we wrap up tonight, like I said, thank you for sharing your time with me. I look
You're welcome.
forward to the next time we do our huddle at one of those other hotspots.
Very good. Very good. The weather's finally breaking.
Yes, sir. It is. All right. That's a wrap. Have a good
All
night.
right, Bill.